Okay, Nancy,
Here.
Mike is not here. Uh, and I've just lost my list. Anne,
Here.
Carol, here, John,
Here,
and Jenny is now gonna be part of us, right?
Mhm.
Okay, and it won't go down. So I think that's everybody. So we do have a quorum, so we can go ahead with the meeting. And lost my,
Lost your agenda.
okay, so there's no, is there anybody for public comment? I see nobody. So the minutes from the October 8th meeting. Uh,
I have actually, maybe what you do, I guess the order, I have something to say, but maybe the order is I approve them and then it comes to discussion. Is that how it works?
Someone makes a motion, they
Someone
get
makes a
seconded,
motion,
and then discussion,
Then the discussion,
and
okay.
then the final vote.
So I move that they be accepted.
okay,
Second,
okay. So now, discussion.
and when you're looking at me about rules, then you're in trouble.
So I was looking at the description of the discussion of the proposed planning study for the city of Greenfield, that whole section. My memory was that at the end of the discussion that it was being referred to Carol, who was going to rewrite that first two sentences of the purpose of the document. Is that?
I thought, no, Carol was just going to negotiate with them to see what the lowest price we could get to do the study. Was my, is that what you?
Well, my issue that I brought up several times at the last meeting was that the first sentence, actually, I have it with me here, is that it all refers to the Green River School. So it's a feasibility to reuse the old Green River School building for municipal offices. And we discussed that it's not exclusively that, but it's more broad brush and looking at all of the municipal needs and all of the buildings and trying to, so that we needed that one sentence
Okay,
to be rewritten. And I don't know who's gonna rewrite it. I mean, I could rewrite it but anyway, but that was that's my memory of the outcome of that discussion.
I'll recompose that and send a draft of the sentence to you all just to approve and then update that in the final minutes.
Thank you so much.
Or I can just like give a quick update that may render all this moot, but I don't have time to do that. I don't know if that's necessarily the direction we're gonna go in,
Right.
and I think that's what the mayor is here
right.
and Stephen
Oh,
maybe to
okay.
speak to. So I think it's all in that same direction, however, via a different means.
And so can we just leave it like it is?
Maybe.
Move forward.
Let's move on and then decide.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Matt, thank you for spelling my name right.
No problem.
That's how rare it is.
Okay, so we should not vote on these minutes until
Can you
later.
just put it aside?
Yeah.
Table it?
Yeah.
Table it, thank you. That's the
Okay.
word.
So in moving ahead, the next thing that we're going to talk about is the financing of future projects. And when will we have money to
But the money man's here.
to do that kind of thing? When can we build a new city hall?
Tomorrow.
unfortunately not. So actually, we had a bond meeting today and we're gonna go out to bid on our bonding. As it stands now. We had several bans for the short-term building for, the library, the fire station, things like that. So we're gonna go out for permanent long-term financing of couple things that are evident from the call today is that based upon the relative wealth of the area, we have a very high level of bonding. So we have to pay down a little more before we move forward. Also, there is a risk that there Right now, we have a lot of unfunded liabilities, most notably the OPEB, which is the other post-employment benefits. That's the health insurance for all the retirees and things like that. It's a huge number. And S&P has decided, well, rather than not necessarily overlook, but we're going to take that more seriously and build that into your credit rating going forward. So that's a risk that we're going to need to have out there. So my suggestion would be to pay down some of our bonds as they stand now, and then we can go ahead and look to future bonding on big projects.
And so I had thought if we made it like a 20-year plan, then we could sort of guide other administrations and the council toward what is possible. Is that not?
No, that is exactly what we need to do. We need to, rather than, plan for 1 or 2 years in advance, it should be a 20-year plan. I completely agree with that.
Okay,
And so, if whatever projects you want to do, say, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 and 20 years from now, they should be on a big list.
right,
And so what that does, that refrains future administrations and future city councils from saying, oh, well, it's just easy to borrow.
right,
And you don't want easy borrowing. You want structured, long-term borrowing
right.
based upon.
And then you can start working now. I mean, let's say in 8 years, we can build a new city hall.
Exactly.
Let's just start with that as.
That's optimistic. I like that.
No, I'm just saying, we can then start with, where's the land going to be?
Mhm.
We can start the stuff that takes 5 years
Exactly.
to get a building committee and all that kind of stuff, right?
Exactly.
And so is there a way to start filling in the blanks
Mhm.
for that 20-year plan?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure if it's this group or another group that would get together and decide what are our plans for the next 20 years and what do we want to see in the next 20 years and what kind of major projects do we want to tackle.
Well, this is the committee that's supposed to be working on
Oh,
all the
great.
buildings. So
That's us then.
that's us. And so far, we have identified a new city hall, a
Okay.
new police station,
Mhm.
an elementary school way down in the
Mhm.
future. And I think there
A
needs.
pool.
Actually, it's gonna have to be looked at as well.
At what?
That is going to have to
That
be,
is, that's a
that
climate.
is going to have to be looked at as well, because there's something in the capital plan coming up. I think it's either next year or the year after, 1.9 million is needed down by the dam for that to continue. But I have spoken with different folk. That is, in my opinion, spending good money after bad. I love swimming down there. I had, my little ticket and would take my grandchildren down there all the time. But unfortunately, climate change is real and there's been a lot more rain. And the beavers, I don't know, I forget what the name of the bacteria is that they come from the beavers, but it's been closing. So to be spending money there is actually a bad idea. And, I've spoken with Christie about that and as well as other department heads. So I was showing folks pictures of in St. Albans, they built an outdoor pool. It's a municipality. It's very similar to ours, economically and diversity wise, very similar. They built an outdoor pool, which they put a bubble over in one of their parks, and it was 5 million in 2021. But so what actually made me think about that was that they're asking for 2 million, and it was work on the dam, which would be necessary to keep the pool going. So I think that needs to be included as part of the capital plan. So thank you, Carol, for saying that. I don't know when any of this is going to happen, but I'm thinking, listening to the bond call, it's like 2035 is when the first thing is paid off. That's when the high school gets paid off.
Is it
Yep.
that long?
2035. And until then, it was a sobering call, actually.
Mhm.
10 years.
So, yep,
10-year bar.
so that is, so we'd need that. I can't think of a parcel of land that we own.
Well, there's that long-term thing of identifying what you're looking for and then
Right,
deciding what you want and then
Yes,
having the
right.
time to go
yeah,
figure it all out.
right.
I mean,
So,
as far as the buildings go, of course, we have the dashboard, that great dashboard that
yes,
would be, we should just, I mean, yes, we're throwing out ideas, but we should look at that very, use it.
Yeah.
That's what we built it for.
Mhm.
And so it's not just replacing things, but it's also repairing, large repair kinds of things that
right,
I'd
exactly.
love to see on that list because that's, we keep, like, as you say, putting good money after bad, they're just trying to get our arms around all of that. Talked about that for several years. And this is a good time to
Mhm.
focus. on
So-
all of that.
What you didn't all know, I just wanted to share with everybody what Carol and I both, it's the three of us on this side of the table. We had a field trip. We made a field trip last week to the Green River School. And we brought, I think there were roughly 18 people there, building electricians. We have electricians that work for the city. I'd asked our plumber who was down here busily working to get our sewer hooked up. Everyone was invited. We had, police and fire. So we were looking on that as a possible reuse because the needs of City Hall were, questionably emergent at the time. Hi.
Hi, Mike.
And so we took a look at that building and there were, many people, the building inspector, there were many people there well-versed in building and building issues. They didn't see that as a possibility for reuse for City Hall. The amount of money that would be needed for getting it up to speed, the layout of the building itself, it's this beautiful. I had actually never been in that before. It's
a great
beautiful, beautiful building,
Right.
but it didn't, I don't think there was a person there that thought that was,
I'm glad to hear that that's put to rest.
yes, it is, but because, and it was a good thing to take a look
Yes.
at. It would be
Yes.
trying to, sometimes working here, there's a little bit of trying to put lipstick on a pig, but trying to do that would be, it just did not seem that was, so we're going back in the direction that we were now, which is important for what Carol said about us as we're looking at the meeting minutes. Everyone, economic development was there, but a central location to being in the center of town is something that really the city folks want to look at. And someone had given a suggestion of something else that was for sale here now in the center, but also we do own the Hope Street parking lot. And just as topics that came up, there was there's a place there that we own and, the fire chief came forward with a wonderful idea of a city that he knew where they did the buildings on the bottom floor. Where they did municipal offices on the bottom floor and housing on the top. And so I'm just throwing that, I'm just talking about the things that were talked about. That was just a small discussion, but it was something that we own. And we also pulled out an old plan for here. Carol had me bring that tonight. But I just want, those are the things that happened probably since we met last. And I don't have anything more to say than that.
But again, we need to make a list prioritizing things, give it to Steve, let him plug in numbers on how it could work financially to make a
Mhm.
20-year plan. And then start gearing the
Backing up.
city toward making that what they're thinking of for the future.
Right. If you did something like that, the number would be a little bit unknown, I think, if you were partnering with another business. I don't know that, but that's a very good point about making a plan for what everything would cost. And I think what Nancy said about looking at the items that need to be done in our buildings as we're going along is certainly important. And I do have one other thing to say, because I met with Karen Patnode yesterday. And where we were making, each of us in our capital planning had put money aside for what we said about looking at the buildings. And then she also had design plans that related to the Four Corners School, as far as the nurses station. I said, if we get somebody in here that we're paying money for plans for, let's combine and have that planner and designer. Let's not waste any of the city's money. Let's have that planner and designer come in and take a look at there and a look at whatever the other idea is, so that we're all getting one planner designer. That might not be exactly what the planning and designer person may have wanted to done, but we can ask them to do whatever it was, because each one of us had put a guesstimate of $85,000 for planning and design, where we probably could get one person who could take a look at both things, because that was, reconfiguring of the doorway for the nurses station and something down the hall.
But isn't that a different thing? I mean, an architect to do a specific project is different from somebody doing an overall plan for the city.
If we're gonna spend money on planning and design, we've spent over the course of years, hundreds of thousands of dollars for planning and design things. I thought this is something, practically speaking, that we're needing, but I'm not in charge of that. We can discuss it. I just would like to not be wasting any of that. And if it's coming, maybe you could look at it. Or
I know, but I'm saying the person that would plan an architectural change to a building to accommodate a nursing station is a different person than someone who comes into the city and looks at the city overall and says, what I see that you need is, X, Y, Z. The person who's doing a door in a building is different from a person that's looking at a big project overall, is all I'm trying to say to you.
They could potentially be combined.
Could they?
Like it could be like if we had Johnson Roberts do the library, but then we wanted them to look at one specific,
Right.
we could do that.
Yeah, we have
Something
Pacheco
like
Ross
that.
that did the fire station and was up giving a little plan for what should happen at the police station, but.
So I'm looking back at this document that was handed out,
Right.
October 4th, to you from who is it from?
Arrow
From
Street.
Arrow Street.
Lawrence, okay. And so task number 2, space planning, it says, meet with the city departments to understand their current offices' long-term space needs and prepare a written survey of what you need, basically. And I don't think they're talking, when you say city departments, I think you're talking about everything, right?
Mhm.
You're not just talking about fire or police or, you're talking about all of those offices. And I think that's what I have wanted, that you have wanted. And I'm thrilled to hear that if it could get combined with school, I think that would be fabulous,
Yes.
because there's this huge question of, would you build a regional elementary school instead of dealing with the existing elementary schools? That's a huge question.
Mhm.
And the person that would be hired for this, I would think, would have the skills to look at that question as well. So looking at all of the properties that the city owns and trying to figure out what the hell to do with, as you say, there's been a lot of money spent on planning.
But not an overall
But
plan.
yes, but usually you have more one sort of focus of the other. And
Right.
it feels like it's time to, especially given the financial situation, we're not going to build anything tomorrow.
Right.
And this is a good time to sit back and really look at the whole picture.
Mhm. And that, because that money is in the capital improvements, can we use that money now? I mean, if capital improvements committee agreed to that kind of study, can we start with that?
I'd like to hear whether other people agree to that's where we need to go. And Carol, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Well, that's nice. Most people don't ever say that. The first thing I don't understand your language.
Okay.
I don't want to, but
Okay.
when you said we're going out for bonding,
Uh-huh.
does that mean we're actually trying to get a bond?
Yes, so, the building projects like the.
The library and the fire
Fire
station.
station.
Yep,
So that was all short-term borrowing.
yep,
in
yep.
order
And
to
now that
build
they're
it.
done,
We go to a long-term, so it's like a
Okay.
construction loan to a
Okay.
mortgage.
Got it.
Oh, thank you, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
and so in the position we're in now, and you may have covered this and I just didn't understand.
Mhm.
Is it looking good? Are we like double A, triple A? Aren't those like the best?
Yeah, they're the best. We
Okay.
we are.
Not that.
What, AAA minus.
Okay.
Which, well, that's good, we get good rates, that way. However, S&P is taking a hard look at cities and towns and especially the OPEB liability and all that type of stuff.
Okay,
And saying, well, you guys with all this liability out there are not in as good a shape as you think you are. So
unbelievable.
we'll have to wait and see
Health
what our
insurance
actual
is
rating
just-
is. Yeah.
But if
Destroying our
we're
whole-
AAA minus, if that's what they come up with, I would say I'm amazed at how wonderful that is. Given our
Well, you can't
situation.
really get a B or a C, right?
Yeah, you
Oh, you
Yeah,
can,
yeah,
so
yeah, you're
right
gonna
on.
be in pretty bad shape.
Don't say that.
You're building
And
it
then-
on fire, so B
Yeah,
plus.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
And so, I'm sorry, can I?
Go ahead.
I remember in the way my brain works, I love to see a good chart or
Mhm.
something visual
Mhm.
that,
Yep.
especially with great colors. But
Mhm.
anyway, and I'm sure I don't read that part of the budget book. I just
Uh-huh.
look at my stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But, when you say 2035, that's when the high school gets that's
It's way
done?
off, yes.
Oh, it's
So
only,
it was a 20-year term.
yeah, that's only 10 years from now.
And then are the library and the fire station also?
Yep, they'll be on a 20-year term, yes.
They're just starting.
The John Zahn Center? I'm trying to think of like big projects.
Yeah, I don't
Is
know
there like that
about the-
table? Cause I know at
Yes,
one
yeah.
point we had, okay,
We have that. Actually, I'm getting access to that because our bond advisor
yeah,
keeps all that in a fancy spreadsheet. So,
Yeah.
so we're gonna
that's why they get the
that.
big bucks.
Yeah, that's right. So we're gonna get that information from them.
Because if I remember correctly, we wanna, at least what we were told, is we wanna maintain a certain percentage of debt. Kind of like with your credit report, like I don't understand why I have to have 8 credit cards when I don't use any of them, but if I cancel any of them, my score goes down. It's so ridiculous, but it seems like it's kind of maybe less ridiculous, but that we want to maintain a certain kind of constant level of debt, because that shows that we're a good credit risk or we pay our bill. I don't know what
Well,
that.
that goes all the way back to the Federalist Papers. Alexander Hamilton outlined arguments for why having debt establishes yourself as a country. So it does give you legitimacy to have debt. So that is a
Some
multiple
artificial
century
It's
year old
part of the
problem.
craziness about capitalism.
No joke, no joke, man.
Well, we're not having trouble doing our part.
Yeah.
We have enough debt. Definitely made that clear. We've done our part.
We've done our part.
We're showing that we have that. We're good with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are we saying then, I promise this, I'm nearing the end. And thank you for the Hamilton reference. But, again, it's gonna fall right out the back. I thought the understanding was we weren't to take on any more debt until the high school was paid off.
Yes, that
So-
would be the smartest thing to do because we're some amount of debt is good. However, we're backed by we're constrained by the levy limit. We're not like
Okay.
the federal government that can just, hey, you know.
Print more money.
More money,
Yeah, yeah.
So we're constrained by that levy limit, so you want to have a certain amount of debt, which is fine, but you don't want to creep up to that levy limit amount where you're unable to pay your bills.
Right. That's
Yeah.
definitely good. But, and so I'm assuming that means we have very little, if any, money to really play with unless we get it from outside
Exactly.
sources.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Okay. And so then if I may, or no, I think the mayor wanted to speak, but you had asked a question and this was my, thank you very much.
Oh, sure.
Because it takes, that helps me understand it better.
So my question was, does it
No, I
make
get it.
sense to go
Yeah.
out and do this, a huge?
I'm gonna say something that might be
Sure.
shocking to you.
Mhm.
Believe it or not, I don't even know if I would have said this until recently. The pool is number one. Pool is number one.
But
This
that's
building
not
is
my
fine,
question.
we can
That's not my
manage.
question.
No, but what I'm telling you is like, if you're saying, let's do this feasibility study, yes, I've been asking for that since I first got on the
Okay,
planning
so it needs
construction.
to
That was the
be-
whole reason I
so the
wanted to be
big-
involved.
Big plan.
But I
needs to
think
be-
our top priority as a city, and I would love to explain a little bit why.
Mhm.
But this is very much an equity issue and it is so critically important we need to be working on resilience, and this is a
Mhm.
perfect example of that.
Mhm.
When we have a community that is filled with a large number of people that don't, guess what? They don't have houses on the Cape. And they can only go to the swimming hole and it's closed for large parts of the summer because of drought
Mhm.
and or flooding and or bacteria levels. And that's the only public place to swim. That's a major equity issue. And not only that, these are people that tend to not even have air conditioning when it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter. So we're really putting people in a completely unsafe and dangerous position. So I would say this pool thing, when the mayor, at first I was sort of like, oh, no, we can't. It's gonna take so much energy to heat it in the winter, which it will, but there's ways we can, it's fascinating. And we can do a saltwater pool, we can make it accessible all winter long. Where there's so many things we need to do. But for the community, I would say that's a top, even though that's if it was 5 million, then somehow it's gonna be 10 for us. I don't know how, but it always is. I got the names of all the contractors that worked up in Vermont. They're very happy with it. It's working out really well. There are more digging to do, obviously, but just to get like a kind of a pulse of, is this possible? Or, it seems like it, I would just say, again, it surprised even me, but stepping back for a second, I know the city hall's not your favorite building. It's not mine
Oh,
either,
no.
but I think as a city, we need to think of everyone. And this is the way, I was involved with, gosh darn it, I don't remember who put it on, but I know I was there with there was a panel of 5 of us. And it was about outdoor access to the community.
Mhm.
And it was eye-opening because I think I was only involved because of the Fisk Avenue project, which is, I'm very passionate about creating quality green space that should be also available. Everyone should be able to get to quality green space within a 10-minute walk of their home. And so anyway, I learned a lot about how many deficits we have in the community. So as far as doing a feasibility study, again, I want one more than anything. However, if we can't buy anything, do anything for 10 years, I think maybe we need to, I don't know. Again, it's like this is now 15 years old. In most ways, there's some good bones in here that we could try to update. But the main thing is they already gave us some square footage requirements. And so that helps us even look at new locations on whether or not it even works. So they added a 28,000 square foot addition in addition to this building being used for meeting space and some other things. And so that's a fair amount that's a pretty large footprint in term, going up and everything like that. So my short answer, I guess, is as much as I think this would be a great idea, if we can't we can't act on it for 10 years,
Okay.
it might make sense
I
to.
only brought this because you told me to.
No, I know, but it was because when I started on October 10th, 2010. So this
Oh,
was
that's
brand
great.
spanking new. I was in the planning department. And from the day I started in this city, I will just say, I've never been trained about anything. It was like, go do it. I built the plane as I flew it. I had no idea. It was sort of like, go save energy. And it's like, okay. I mean, I had to change streetlights. I'm like, how do you change streetlights? I mean, how do you do that? I learned. It was hard and now we did it. But anyway, this was just interesting to me because at the time, there was that hideous annex back there. And it was just a way to learn about the city. But now I realize, and again, I've been pushing for this because we did do so many capital projects that I felt really could have been better informed by,
Mhm.
but those ships have sailed.
Thank you, Carol. And I totally, I loved listening to your priorities and why and all that stuff. And I would like to ask the people out there in cyberspace and Anne for your thoughts about the big picture of the need. And when you say maybe it's too far away, 10 years for me, like 10 years doesn't feel very far away. That will vanish in a bit, in just a flash. And by the time we have the plan in hand, it'll be 9 years. I mean, as I get, it's like they just tick off. So I'd love to hear from other people before we jump into some details. Anne or the John or Eric.
Let's see if John wants
I'm
to go
sorry.
first.
From my perspective, what I'm hearing is that you've added the pool as an additional structure that has to be included in the plans, but why can't that be incorporated in an overall, overall facility setup plans? As Nancy was saying, why put that as one of the items? It could be one of the first items, but you still have to plan for the items that are going to follow that down the road. So that we had talked about maybe putting an RFP together for a planning study, so we could get a definitive budget established for what we need to be done. We talked about, prioritizing it. We can still come up with a prioritized list, but we're going to have to get some numbers put together on all these programs to see how they fit in with the 20-year budget. So again, I think it falls on us not to just try to concentrate on one item, but to try to look at the overall needs of the city over the long term and get all those items in some sort of a study that's performed to make sense of all the issues.
Thank
So
you.
again, putting us back, getting us back to, our original game plan that Gene was working on with us is to get some kind of a long-term master plan. We can set the guidelines for what we want to be looked at, and then let somebody do the legwork. But we got to get a budget for that legwork, and maybe that can be a part of that $85,000 budget that's sitting out there in the capital budgeting things. But that could also include, some preliminary planning for when a pool could be put in place. Okay, so that it doesn't preclude a pool, but should include the pool in the overall scheme of things.
Mike? I called you Eric because that's what it says, but it's Mike.
You're on silent,
You're muted.
muted, that's the word.
You're still muted.
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
How's
There
There
that?
you go.
Sorry about that.
And now we
So,
can hear you.
my son Eric used my computer last for a Zoom meeting, and hence I'm Eric now. I apologize. So, I am in favor of doing some work to move this forward and get some good numbers to work with and such like that. That's in my favor for sure.
Any more details on that you want to share?
I'm sorry.
Are there any other details you'd like to share? Other than just saying you like the idea of a big plan?
Having not had time to read the other materials, I'll refrain from that. How's that?
We're glad you're here. That's, so thank you. And Anne, what would you say?
So how long does it take to secure a state grant for something? Because I'm thinking that would be baked into this 20-year plan of if we know it'll take 5 years in order to get the grant from the state to pay for the police station, then we'll know that on our timeline, it has to be 5 years before we start construction and paying. So I'm wondering if the planning would not actually be premature because it's about grant scheduling, if that makes sense. So I do totally understand what Carol's saying about, I mean, anything we plan now, we can bake in cost increases of up to 1,000,000%. Because the world is insane.
At this moment, yes.
So I think that's where I fall on things.
Jean, do you have something you want to add? Or where are you at in this?
I guess it boils down to what the mayor thinks, because the mayor's in charge of the whole thing. And we can try to persuade her, but it doesn't matter. I mean, that's
Well,
my.
this is your opportunity to persuade her, so.
I am just concerned that things happened in the past, like the John Zahn Center, a building was torn down that could have been used for something else. The library, the fire station was torn down with no plan for what to do with the people in the fire station. That this planning has not taken,
I see.
that you have a new mayor, a new group of ideas. And we had to go and buy land for the fire station. I mean, there was a lack of forethought.
I see.
And I would like for us to have something, so when you're not in charge, there will be something you have left behind to guide the people into the future that the whole town has bought into.
I mean, regardless, we can't keep going on with the left hand having no idea what the right hand is
And
doing.
you can't plan to, for instance, build a fire station on plot A, and a new mayor comes and says, I don't like plot A, I want it on plot X.
Right.
And, you know, I'm just trying to say, we're not dictating for the future, we're saying, here is a plan, and here is how it can be implemented. That's where I'm trying to come
Okay.
from.
So you're asking me, we actually put a placeholder in there, having listened to what you had to say. When you came up with something before, or, you know, it was looking at the building, we didn't actually have a funding source, so you can't. That's the one thing about that's funny about government, you can't go ahead and do something unless you have the money to pay for it.
Yeah.
So
Silly.
we put something into capital planning for this month with that idea in mind. So I am hearing from this group that you think that we should have a long-term plan of exactly what is needed, and I agree with that. That's the answer.
And I would say that we go out to the community and let them help us with the order
Absolutely.
of plan, you know, of when
Engage them
things
in
should,
some way.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
This should not just be dictated from above,
Absolutely.
that we should go out now to the community. We should start with the survey.
But at the same time, there's certain things like the police station, some parts of it that are in rough shape are parts that the community does not get to see unless they're having a really bad day. And so there are certain things that are just not
Right.
well known. So there does need to be an informed counterbalance.
Right.
Well, that's part of the whole education and outreach.
Right.
Yeah, and I wanted to say one thing about the grants that you mentioned.
Mhm.
It's like, for me, it's like if you have a big plan, then that also informs you of like, oh, okay, when do we need to go out and
Mhm.
get and ask for that grant?
Mhm.
I mean, so knowing that you want to go out in 5 years from now, that's the useful thing to know.
Well-
You know,
Yeah, I mean, if we know
So-
that in 2035, when the high school's paid off, we go to build a combo town hall swimming pool.
whatever, yeah.
We can do
Or,
those.
or a
Yeah.
school, or whatever it is that we decide to do. So I think the grant, knowing, keeping your eyes obviously aware on what the grants are, and they'll keep changing over time, how much they are for, where they're gonna come from, all of that stuff can fit into, once you have a plan of what you want to do, then there's the thing of, well, how am I gonna do it?
Right.
Those are two different things.
And the library took 10 years of planning, and the MBLC, the Massachusetts, whatever the library,
MBLC.
MBLC,
Something library.
worked with us for 10 years on getting it all in place, getting it designed, coming up with the money. It takes that long on the municipal stuff. You don't just go to the bank, get a mortgage and say, I'm gonna build a house like we do so I'm just saying, I'm not worried about that part of it. If we did get an elementary school, it's a 10-year process to go through the state paying for half of it.
Mhm.
So I'm just saying that if we have something now in place to go out to the city and start saying, here's what we're thinking, what does everybody else want to talk about? Go to the council, say, here's what we're thinking about, give us feedback, that's better than when, let's say in 8 years, if we don't have the same mayor and a new person comes in and blows up everything, we would want everybody to be aware that that's what's happening.
That's a good way to put it.
So, I have one other thought on this, thinking of the taxpayers. And as Stephen said, when we was talking about taking a bond, we are just bonding now. We are just long-term bonding for the things that we just finished. So to go out and be asking our taxpayers now, who are just starting to pay for 2 large buildings, it's in their tax bill, they know it, isn't the absolute best timing, and it's not on my radar. I actually just went to go look at a school because we factually had sewerage backing up here twice. And the heat went out in the building in January. I've had 4 things since I was in this building since January. We had the heat out for 3 weeks. We had an earthquake. And we had a room cordoned off under mine, and they told me not to dance or jump in my room. But I tell, and I actually would look when I had meetings, and I'd be thinking how many people were in there and looking to see, what I thought the total weight was in my room. Then we had sewerage back up, and people were getting headaches, so we moved them upstairs. I had to have the fire department come in to certify that it was okay, as it was the day that payroll went in. I had I just want to make that perfectly clear. We weren't looking at building something new, because I thought we haven't even permanently bonded for one of the 2 buildings that we just finished. So, I personally do not want to be out there with a survey now talking about what's next, okay? Because I don't think that the climate's ready for it. I don't think people are ready for it. I'm not ready for it. I think it's very important to have these meetings and have them televised, and for people to know these are the issues and the thing that you're thinking of. Before we put out an RFP for the school to decide what else there is, we needed to take some smart people up there to take a look at what was, because we were making an emergency evacuation plan and figuring how we were going to do the business of the city in the fire department meeting room, right? But to have, I think I would look at it as a long term, like that we are spending money for a long-term plan. I very much want to have citizen input because we're elected by people. That's the fact of the matter. To see what people will want to do. And yet we have to rely on the people that know, like which ones are good and which ones are bad. But this would be a bad time to go out and say, what would you like to do next?
Right.
But I do want to circle back to something, because I think a much smaller thing that's happening that there might be money for, and we might have to spend money anyway. We met emergently with the legislative delegation because we didn't know what we were going to do here. And they kept talking about this, there is money out there right now for climate resiliency things.
Yep.
There were they had two words, but one of them was climate resiliency, which I keep thinking of that. Climate would be dictating any kind of change that we were making with a swimming area. And I just think that that's a more practicable thing that is perhaps,
Yeah, maybe there's money to do that.
right, there may be. And so I just want to throw that out there, but I definitely think that there was wisdom in your group talking about having a long-term plan of what's needed. And then we had a bond call, and we have our own bill, so we all know it may be needed, but it's not needed tomorrow. But we have to have a plan so that we can move forward.
Can I just add a little bit more, please? And again, I think I might ask Stephen, my experience and looking through this kind of confirms it. And even our master plan, trying to predict where we're going to be at in 10 years is really tough. Any of these numbers, what are they? 3% a year or 5% a year, which adds up so
Construction,
fast.
5 to 7, yeah.
It's ridiculous. So every time, I don't think it's smart to invest the money to come up with estimates on stuff that we know we're not going to be doing. In terms of grants,
Yeah,
theoretically, there's money falling from the sky, whether that's going to continue on climate, and it's not easy to get. And this is in addition to, but I do think the pool is definitely, that's a huge winner. And I think we can easily get that funded. But what I would recommend is, and it basically just with what the mayor was saying, I would love to get like an objective, super accomplished structural engineer or like look at the buildings with the biggest deficits with an objective eye and deal with I personally really have a hard time believing that like a 1 point earthquake in Connecticut caused damage all the way up here. But whatever, just having experts that we can rely on to look at what and like with the police station, maybe ways to address portions of it if we don't have the money to do everything while we're looking for grant funding. So I think it makes sense to have a really thorough list, which I think we kind of already do, but again, having someone put that into one place for us of all the properties owned by the city, including any land, and then addressing so that we can help prioritize. And then again, with all of these, they predict how much staff are you going to have? And it's only 5 years out. I don't see any that are
I'm not
even
seeing any
close.
point in doing that.
It doesn't, well, that's what you have to do to figure out what you need in terms of space and in terms of like a building, and then that's how you get a cost. And so I think we need to be strategic. If we know we're doing this as a planning document, that we are not gonna have it doesn't make sense, right? Every time I've seen a study that has money attached to it within a year, it's already like, oh, we can't, those numbers are gone. And it's ridiculous, but it's true. So 10 years on, I don't see that being a smart use of money, but I do see a lot of other good that we can do so that we are having things shovel ready. So we know what we need and what it entails. So we're good to go when a grant comes up or some kind of funding makes sense. And again, that's just my experience, having done this for many years and wanting things to happen so much that should be easy and then they become impossible. And so this is in so many ways obsolete. However, it's got some good information in it, but it kind of needs to be revamped and anyway. So I'm not trying to be a downer. I'm just trying to not, yeah, it's always fun to have a nice spanking brand new shiny study, but if we can't do anything with it for a
Mhm.
while, then it's, and people, I mean, Mary, you said it yourself. We've spent so much money on studies and
We had another one when I came in here. This is actually, you'll
Oh.
find this all very amusing. When I walked in here, we'd spent I was on disability access for quite a while. And we kept saying, no, we didn't want to spend that. We just wanted to fix the bathroom downstairs. But 25,000 went from a plan. Again, we had this one done and then we had another one. They asked me which way I'd like the ramp. It's like, which direction I came in here. This had just been done. Which direction I would like the ramp to go in. Meanwhile, I'm knowing there's no way that we're going to be doing this because I knew there wasn't funding. And they're like, yeah, I had to pick. I had to say, I'd like it to go in this direction or this direction for that to end. So I did. I picked a direction knowing full well that we weren't going to do that. Because once you got into 30% of the cost of the building,
right.
it was all over.
Yeah.
I thought if they walked in and closed their eyes, you know, but they didn't. They had that and something else. And I'm like, in disability access, I just kept saying, couldn't we get somebody for 25,000 to fix the bathroom? Which nope, but we have this one. This is beautiful. It's a very thick book. I might like add, just so you can all see it. It's fat, okay? And then there was the other one. It's on the desk. And I did. I said, yep, I like it that way. And we're not doing it because I knew that there wasn't any money for it. But, you know, and I thought I'm for equal access for all. It's the bathroom's still the way it is. Anyways.
But
I
we spent a
think it's
bunch of money on.
the plan. But you know what? Another thing, there's always money. This seems to be, that's another funny thing. There's always money for plans. That is there's not always money for the buildings, but there's always money for plans. So
They want to hook you.
I don't know. Go ahead.
Well, I agree with your frustration about plans. I keep seeing them in, in the paper come, oh, the plan for this, plan for that, all the money. It's like, I agree with that. And I totally agree that whatever we do, it shouldn't involve money, how much anything's gonna cost.
Right.
That has
You
nothing.
gave me a lot of bad news. This is all your fault. I didn't know we didn't have any money for 10 years.
Downer, yeah.
So for me, and I've been thinking about this whole thing about it's not the right time to talk to the community, and this and that, and I'm like, well, I want to think on a little bit more. But one idea that immediately came to me is, and you were saying this, Jean, this committee is the committee that makes the decision. We meet monthly. We could simply say, this committee is talking about planning long range. If you're interested, come electronically, come in person, whatever. And just see who shows up, and those people who care about the infrastructure and all that stuff, if they come, great. But and there's part of me that also says, well, it's not a horrible time to go out to people. If you're really honest about what you're doing,
Okay.
that there's no money for 10 years, we're not going to do anything for 10 years. But in order to, well, I don't want to say this out loud, but in order to avoid the problems and the decisions, they maybe not the perfect decisions that were made in the past, we're going to think long-term, and we want to hear from you. And yes, all those people are going to change in 10 years. And then people that have different opinions. I mean, all of that is true. But I think if we have at least a guesstimation and trying to get things into one place, hopefully not as thick of a book as that.
There's a lot of photos.
Simpler.
Ton of photos. The whole back of it, they were just cheating.
Okay.
And there's a lot of points that fold out, so it's thicker than it should be.
I still think a big, plan and somehow engaging people, if people wanted to, would be something that I could get excited about.
Well, I guess the bottom line is, what does this committee recommend on the, is it 85,000,
87.5, I think,
87?
Yeah, what can we get for 87.5?
a lot.
I hope so.
I mean, is it worth it or not? I mean, that's the
That's another
question.
question. Do you want that now?
Yeah,
I think having that amount earmarked and maybe knowing we'd spend, I think maybe we could do it for 50,
That'd be
where we
great.
get again, it takes some time to think everything through, but some really useful information. Basically, we want to be able to be ready for, and it's not like we're not gonna do nothing for 10 years, because
Right.
stuff's still gonna break and things are still gonna change. We have no idea what's coming, and,
and we also need to not dump a whole bunch of money into a building
right,
that we need to have a plan so we don't have to.
exactly.
Well, going to the dam at the swimming area, if we know we're already going to be spending a ton there and climate resiliency funding pops up, then.
Yeah,
Well, there's that, I was still thinking about, that shovel ready phrase that you were using.
That's what they use in
And-
this world
right.
all the time.
And what I'm remembering is that the transit building, the Ulver.
Yep.
building got built.
Yep,
With a huge. pile
That was
of money,
our
and All of
money,
a
though.
sudden showed up. And why? Because it was it was shovel ready.
yep.
It was, and all of a sudden they wanted to do X and it fit into that little,
Okay.
no, and it got built. With a miracle, because before that, I don't know if you remember this, but FERCog was in probably 6 different offices spread out all over the community. They were just, there was no centralization.
So we
of
need to
their
kick
office
them out
space.
and take it over.
Well,
There's
Give
an
them this
idea.
building.
You know, right, and that was something else that occurred to me with thinking of, putting 2 municipal things together with housing. Maybe there is money to do that. Maybe it was there now. Maybe there's not. I certainly know that it's not there for us to be thinking about borrowing or
Yeah.
taxing for. But it is good to have some ideas ready. So I don't know. You've all been doing this for a while, so I'm gonna listen to what you had to say. Have you all been on this, John? You're relatively new. I'm just asking, you're new too, right? To this board, is that correct?
Yes, I am. Yes, I
Yes.
am. This is my
And
first-
Mike, have you been on doing this for a little while or?
Oh, you muted again.
I believe it's one of the 2 years about now.
Oh, okay. I was just curious. I know that Jean's been doing it for a while and Nancy, you have, and Carol. The 3 of you have been on
Very
this
long
for
time.
quite a while, so. And Ian and I are probably been here about the same amount of time, right? So, so you've got some newbies on this and so I'm gonna listen to those of you who've been. Your input. We're going,
Every once in a while, Siri decides just.
Siri,
You asked it a question.
Oh, is that what that was?
Siri has become something different. That happened to me the other day. She's listening more.
It's scary.
Yeah. Jim Comey would have something, maybe he would have something over the eye of the television. So Siri's listening in a way that was not before. It happened to me the other day.
Scary,
They run
scary.
it all.
They're all watching us.
Right. Siri, what should we do next?
Should we do the study, Siri?
You know what's creepier is if I Google about a trip to Madrid and then hang out with you, if my phone is near your phones, you'll start to get advertisements for a trip to Madrid.
No,
Right.
oh my
Maybe we
God.
should all go. So at any
We
rate.
can afford it.
Let's find a grant for that.
So what would be the next step? What would
Well,
need
we're
to be
going-
done? An
we're
RFP
going-
this would have to be somewhat revised or we.
It would, I just,
Close?
I That would have to be revised, and this was my idea to combine two things that were not at all alike. I just like to take full credit for this, and I frequently have bad ideas, just so you know. You always tell me if I have an idea that you don't like. I saw two different entities putting forward about the same dollar figure, 85,000. And I personally went down and looked at one. I agree that a plan needs to be made there, you know, whether it's moving the nurses station, I just couldn't envision two of us. Both of those things are on the docket to be discussed or voted on by capital planning. But I do understand about combining apples and oranges. They would make a funny pie, but we have to spend this money like it's our own.
Yes.
Yes.
I totally
And we
agree.
cannot, I don't know how much those go for. This last plan that we had where I had to look at the ramp and something else was $25,000. So I have a just spending concern about spending $85,000 is for plans that involve building. So I'm gonna leave that
So
to
with
someone else.
the bathroom, you spent all the money on a plan and then could not do anything to the bathroom?
That is correct. I'm actually gonna bring it in here for show and tell because I was so annoyed. I voted it down in disability access, although I've been fighting for access for years because I'm like, could you fix the bathroom? And instead, I'm gonna bring you this lovely plan because that's unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of handouts to people who make plans that we can't do anything with.
Well, and again, a lot of things have happened because there was grant funding. And so plans move forward knowing how many plans have we have on downtown? You're on SGIC. Geez, every freaking month there was a new plan and it was like a plan on a plan on a plan. That doesn't fill storefronts or change anything. But the money was there because it was COVID and the state was just here. We'll do this. So we're saying we're helping.
That's $25,000.
This is this year's
Oh,
plan.
that's from BJ, right? I think.
This is this
Oh,
year's.
Austin Design.
Okay, I had to pick the way the ramp would go, knowing we weren't doing that. Yeah,
At least I gave you a color copy.
it's beautiful, so beautiful. Yeah. Huh? Right. Anyways, so even to spend money on plans, it should be thoughtful, and I
Smart,
really
yeah.
do wish that we just, my son is in construction, not that I would ever be, don't worry, I know about whatever that is, 40B. I would never be thinking of that, but I thought a plumber could come in here and say, the doorway is not wide enough. And we still have those two bathrooms, and we have all of these, and that other fat one over there. So I think we, you know,
Well, the bottom line, I guess, is Carol,
Hmm.
do you have time to talk to,
No, but go ahead.
those planning people? If we kept the money in capital improvements and work out something that would give us what we want, that doesn't have money attached, but has people come in and say, the police station should be replaced first, or the city hall should, that kind of planning,
You mean Arrow Street?
or one of those companies.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that everyone I talk to, so this is how it goes. Can I just tell you how it goes? This will save you having to come work for a city. When you have money, whoever you talk to will say that they will give you everything you want. They promise you the moon and the stars, and then you sign the contract, and this doesn't matter what you're doing, pretty much, with few exceptions. And I get to deal with the exceptions usually because there are people very passionate about what they do and they care. But then you're, okay, I'm being maybe too cynical, but I'm just saying that I'm not, I'd almost be afraid to not do this via some kind of RFP.
Oh, okay.
Just to make sure we get like a good cross section, because I don't know, all these companies, like I already talked to, who the hell? it was about a different project, but they were just like, yeah, we'll do, and I was like, this is what I want. And then I realized like they were just yesing me. And I really don't think they've ever done what I was asking. And that's my problem because I work like kind of in a vacuum. I'm like, this is what I think it's called or, and it makes sense to me, but anyway, I would want to make sure, again, I treat this like it's my money. I want to make sure we're not. And I've been disappointed more times than I can count where we pay consultants a lot of money and I'm doing all the lifting, heavy lifting, lion's share of the work, or I get something I can't use. So I really want to make sure that it's someone that we can work closely with and get what we want. What I want, right? If I'm just kidding, but you know what I mean? Something that is useful. And again, who the heck was I just talking to? I was just. It might have been in my own life. No, it was with the ERUs. We talked to them and they're like, oh yeah, we do that all the time. But I didn't know what I was asking. We had to change the scope of the proposal. And so it was just a matter of like, let's talk it out. And that went really well. But again, it's like kind of learning as you go. So not to say there's anything wrong with Arrow Street, but again, I'd be really nervous just being like, I just came across a study.
I know, and I'm not saying,
Yeah.
you're right, it should be an RFP.
And I think we will get a good number of responses and hopefully that can help separate the wheat from the chaff
And we could also then discuss what they're really offering for
Yeah.
this amount of money.
And they should be bringing stuff to the table to say, okay, in other communities, we're not unique. We're all
That's right.
struggling.
That's
We're all like in New England trying to fix up old buildings and keep them operational with aging infrastructure and failing, falling school enrollment. All these things are ubiquitous. So
That's true.
So what are the effective expenses for the town in putting out an RFP? Not just monetarily, but people are gonna have to be pulled off of other jobs to put it together. So what would it take for us to just put out the RFPs, knowing that we may choose none of them? Or are we obliged to choose someone?
we're never obliged
I think all you have to do is have money.
to have someone write
You have
it.
to have money allocated first, and then it does involve, it involves staff to
right.
be getting that done. So we even prioritize the RFPs. Probably the next RFP that we'll be putting out will be something, in my guess, will be for repurposing of the Green River School. And then, right, so it takes, I wouldn't say it was the expense on the city. Stephen is
It's
doing.
a,
Staff time.
yeah, staff time and maybe $1,200 for advertising.
Right. Right.
But there has to be money in a pot somewhere that they know that you are.
That it exists.
So we'd have to wait till the capital got approved.
Right.
Yeah,
So after July.
Which will be
yeah.
paring down as we speak.
Yeah, so it's,
Yeah, we have actually have
Final
capital,
goal.
we have capital committee next at the fire station at 5:30.
So we have to call this meeting to a close. Do I have a motion to?
So moved.
A second. Okay, so let me call roll. John,
I'm good with the end of the meeting.
Mike,
Yes, I concur.
okay, Carol,
yes.
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 and I'm a yes. So meeting is adjourned.